Does anyone know what NaNoWriMo is? If you're new to writing or you're not a writer at all, you might have never heard of it. It stands for National Novel Writing Month, and it's encouraged numerous people to write a novel within a month, or maybe two. This year, I've been slowly chipping away at my bigger manuscripts, but I've also been storing up a ton of ideas which I think might be interesting as their own standalone stories. And for anyone who hasn't written before, writing something like 50,000 words is a little difficult to wrap one's head around. So to help you do that, think back to any of the essays you wrote in school. Think about how long and arduous it was to write a persuasive essay or a historical recap about all the editing that went into it, all the research, and how you most likely procrastinated it until the very last day or pretended that your computer was broken so you could upload it a week after. Now remember that most of these essays tend to fall within the 1,000 to 2,500 word count, and perhaps you'll get a better perspective on that. Maybe an even better perspective would be to say that in order to write 50,000 words in the span of 30 days, you'll need to write an average of 1,667 words per day. And that's assuming you write a novella instead of a novel, because a novel is actually typically around 80,000 words at minimum. Just like many other creatively minded months, NaNoWriMo is about more than just starting and finishing a novel in a month. It's about making progress and setting yourself to a goal, even if you might not fully reach it. I don't know when this video is going to come out. Heck, it might even come out when the month of NaNoWriMo is pretty much done. But why should we stop with just 1 month? You can always start your own version of NaNoWriMo in December or January, or in the middle of the month until the next middle of the month. You don't need 50,000 words, you just need a goal which helps you stay consistent and builds a habit of writing every day. Writing is a series of consistent choices, and all you need to do is put yourself in a scenario where you have an excuse to make those choices. And when it comes to the topic of this video, know that I am coming from a place of personal experience and empathy, even if I happen to disagree or even dislike the writing of another creator. Because as much as a YouTube author may or may not suck at writing, they've at least taken the time to make something and put it out into the world for people to scrutinize. Writing is not an easy task, and writing something great is even less so. However, that doesn't mean we cannot analyze or critique. Far from it. When it comes to writing on YouTube, I've noticed a trend among the typical writing gurus, advice givers, and critics, and even some of the people who are not that but still have a book of their own. And it's that they all kinda suck at writing. Or at least I've heard they all suck. I haven't read some of their books. And that's why today I'll be exploring the curse of the YouTube author, what it is, why it might be happening, and if it can be broken. But first, in order to keep the lights on, my fridge full, and my editors above the poverty line, I would like to thank today's sponsor, Rocket Money. Hello, Fleshbag Scrit here. You know, every day it feels more and more like companies love to make money off of our inconvenience. Maybe it's an extra few dollars for eggs, or, more commonly, it's counting on you being too lazy to cancel your subscriptions. A lot of the times, we can find ourselves struggling to pay the bills by the end of the month, and we end up wondering where all that money is gone. That's why Rocket Money is a great app which helps you budget and meet your financial goals with an easy-to-use app that you can try out for free right now. In just a few taps, you can cancel unwanted subscriptions and reduce the cost of any of the bills that you're forced to pay. With its premium features, Rocket Money has helped its customers save up to $740 per year. That totals out to about $880 million saved between all of its customers. Rocket Money lets you set budgets and notifies you of upcoming charges so that you can stay on top of your finances with ease and peace of mind. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code and get started for free. You can also unlock even more features with Premium. Anyways, back to the rest of the video. The curse of the YouTube author can be described pretty simply. Someone who is a very successful YouTuber, regardless of whether or not they might actually make content centered around writing, but who is also seemingly a terrible author. Or at the very least, their skill in writing does not seem to be equal to the skill that they portray to their audience or the skill and expertise with which they can make a YouTube video. Oftentimes, this leads many viewers to believe that, because their skill sets are unequal, the advice they might tell to their audience is ineffective. Because if the advice they were spouting was so good, then why aren't they good authors, and why don't they seem to follow that advice themselves? Some viewers may even develop a conspiracy theory in their heads that these writing gurus are just false prophets, leading their audience of sheep off a cliff for which they will never become good writers. Only to seemingly never have an answer when you ask them, well, how would you write this instead? I think it's very easy to judge authors and writing gurus for not living up to the bar we set for them, or even the bar they set for themselves. We look up to them as knowledgeable teachers, only to discover that they themselves lack the skills they espouse to have, and they lack the talent to make something truly great. But when it comes to writing gurus in specific, I think I have another video idea I would like to discuss that particular topic on, so I'll leave that part there. What I'm talking about specifically in this video is why YouTubers can't seem to write an amazing novel. I mean, we've got excellent musicians, incredible artists, but about the only renowned author with a decently sized YouTube channel is Brandon Sanderson. In fact, I think he's often considered to be an exception to the rule by some. But also, funnily enough, I have seen people online trying to say he's an overrated author, or that he's not that good at writing. Often, the critiques for Sanderson is that he puts too much of his stock into world-building details and not enough into everything else. And I gotta say, that's not really a take I agree with. Sure, we've got a good explanation of all the rules, politics, and systems in his world, but all of that extra detail adds to the story for me as a reader. I enjoy Sanderson's novels, specifically because of those world-building details and the well-thought-out magic systems. But I think this is where I need to make my first point. Among all the different artistic mediums, it is writing which is most subjectively enjoyed. When music is good, we cannot help but sing along or bob our heads or feel something from it. We can visually see whether or not something is high quality when it comes to art and animation. We interact with and judge things with a very small amount of investment. All you need to do is look at a picture for about 5 seconds to tell if it's good or not, or listen to about 5 minutes of audio to see if the song is something that you like. Even a YouTube video or a movie doesn't require the same investment as a book. And it's because of how much a book asks people to invest that I believe writing is the most subjectively enjoyed medium, and why it's also one of the most heavily critiqued mediums. When we look at an animated show or a comic book, oftentimes the art and animation quality are not the biggest parts of the discussion, unless the name of your show is something like One Punch Man or Berserk. Even though we consider things like movies, TV shows, animations, and comics to be visual mediums, we cannot help but critique the writing whenever we dislike it, or praise the writing whenever we love it. And while exceptions like One Punch Man or Berserk exist, wherein the writing is great but the visuals are terrible, it's often that we come to enjoy a visual show which is lacking in good visuals but has stellar writing, over something which has incredible visuals but terrible writing. But even terrible writing can become a draw for audience more so than the visuals. But that's a whole different discussion. You can tell at a glance whether or not something looks good when it comes to a visual medium. Writing always asks more of you. It asks you to invest your time and attention to understand it. And it is because of that increased understanding, or lack thereof, that writing is so heavily scrutinized. Even if your plot, characters, and world building are good, someone can still take issue with the prose on the page. The same people can read the same book and come to completely different conclusions as to whether or not they actually enjoyed the story that was told to them, and in the way that it was told to them. People can learn to love an art style, but it's not often people learn to love a writing style. In fact, it's easier to learn how to hate a writing style simply because of the investment writing asks of its reader. Every word can be nitpicked, every phrase or joke can be torn apart. There's nothing which is safe, and the more the readers of that book know about the author, the more their opinion of that work is colored by their opinion of that author. I mean, think of just a few examples. Has-Been Hotel / Hell of a Boss. Oh, they all swear all the time. Rick and Morty. Oh, they stumble through the punchline and they stutter all the time, so that, if you really think about it, it's kind of funny, you know? And I think this is where the core of my argument lies. The curse of the YouTube author has a unique element to it, which is not present in other forms of authorship. And it's that there is already a bias when it comes to YouTube authors. Many people will use success and popularity to determine quality. But that's not always the case. And in many cases, when it comes to YouTubers who publish a book, it's often the opposite. And that discrepancy can piss people off. When the quality doesn't match the success, it's often that the YouTube author is called a bad writer who is undeserving of the popularity that their novel holds. Even if the author is quite proficient at writing, or even just above average. Nothing pisses people off more than undeserved success. So the ones who actually invest enough time into reading the YouTuber's book are probably going to be extra pissed off when they realize they don't like what's been written. They might even have idolized the author as a great writing guru who taught them a lot about writing and helped them advance their own skills, only to see that the book of this guru follows none of the advice they give out to people on their channel. Either that, or the YouTuber has a channel which is generally unrelated to writing, but then every now and then they'll mention their book, or maybe they come out with an autobiography, or a storybook, or whatever else. And then we come to realize that their book, while it sold extremely well and has many positive reviews from the fanbase, actually kinda sucks in every department. The way I might liken this is the difference between someone who is funny during a conversation with friends and someone who does stand-up comedy. Sure, someone might appear charismatic and funny when they can bounce off of whatever conversation is happening at the time, but it takes a completely different skill to develop a funny situation and put it into writing. You might already know and resonate with the sense of humor your friends have, but speaking to an audience of strangers is much different. In the same way, YouTube is a more personal and human medium. We often feel like the YouTuber is a good friend of ours, who we know personally. We know all the stories they told us about themselves, all the things which interest them, and even some of their flaws and shortcomings. But when it comes to writing a novel, that's not always going to be something the audience picks up. And even if the audience does pick up the book, then their perception of what the YouTuber has written is going to be completely controlled by their opinion of the YouTuber/author. I used to be a fan of Shadiversity for the interesting and historical videos he would make on his channel. It was fun to learn about the ways in which medieval Europe worked, what was practical for sword fighting and what wasn't. It was also interesting to see that Shad had written a book which appeared to be very well received by his audience at the time. This was during a time when Shad was well liked in the community and even outside of it. People had nothing but good things to say about his novel, and finding a negative review was incredibly difficult. That was until Shad decided to talk about his opinions of AI. After that, suddenly his writing, which has remained the same, is actually the biggest piece of dog shit anyone has ever seen. And I am neither defending nor attacking Shad here. I don't really watch his videos anymore, and I'm not particularly offended by his takes on AI or even his beliefs in conservatism, though I do heavily disagree with him. What I am trying to illustrate is the shift that I noticed as someone who witnessed it firsthand. I looked up to Shad as a proof of concept for myself and my own writing. Someone who could make a YouTube channel and then sell their novel on the side. Someone who could garner an audience both for their book and for their videos. And what I got in return was a grim message. If your audience likes you, then you're never going to hear what's wrong with your book or your writing. If your audience hates you, or your book grows beyond its niche due to controversy, then you're never going to know which critiques are good and which are bad faith. Because at the end of the day, your novel is not being judged on its own merits. It's being judged based on the reader's opinion of you. If it's gotten popular due to controversy, then you will be swarmed with people nitpicking every single aspect of the book to death. You will see people who exaggerate their negative opinions of your work for validation from other people who dislike you as a person. And even if your book does well because your audience loves you, then you are going to fall into a different trap. You're going to become someone who believes their own hype. Someone who stops improving and regresses as an artist simply because your audience is always praising you no matter the quality of what you've written or done. Even if you think your work is bad, your audience might still gaslight you into thinking it's the best thing you've ever written. Your audience might lead you astray and stunt your growth simply because they like you too much to tell you the truth. So how does one break that curse? The first answer I have in my head is just to simply not listen to any of the feedback that you're given and continue working towards a better standard of writing, whether your audience likes it or not. It's not like we can ignore all the feedback that we get. In fact, there might be a lot of useful critiques which can really help us understand something that we didn't before. We don't want to dismiss all criticism as bad faith, or assume that if someone has a negative opinion of our work, it must mean that they hate us as a person. Just the same, when someone is praising us, it can do us a lot of good to believe in that praise from time to time. It can reassure us that we are on the right path and that we don't need to overthink our stories. So maybe we can look at the feedback while picking and choosing what we believe and what we don't? But what if our ego gets in the way? What if we decide that a common criticism is always made in bad faith? The answer to breaking this curse is, I don't really know for sure. I do think I know what I want to try, though. I want my audience to be honest when it comes to my writing. I don't want praise, and I don't want plain honesty either. I want honesty with compassion. If my writing is bad, then it's bad. If it's great, then it's great. The things I write are things which I spend a lot of time trying to get better at, but don't always succeed. And having a good or bad opinion of my writing is not going to bring you any closer or further away from me as the YouTuber. I don't like the idea of interacting with a large audience who likes me as a person for this exact reason. I never want to be in a position where people judge the quality of my book based upon the quality of my character. I don't want to be praised for my writing simply because someone likes me as a person or wants to get something from me. Just the same, I don't want someone to hate my novel even if they hate me or what I believe in. But that's not something I can really force people to do. All I can do when faced with such uncertainty is open up a document and start writing.